Dusti Martin with the Martin Group at Platinum Living Realty. Right now, I'm going to talk about some things we are seeing in the Arizona real estate market that you should be aware of if you're thinking of buying right now. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any more updates, and let's go. All right, first thing you need to know is that home prices, for the most part, have either tapered off and leveled off in most parts of the valley, or they're continuing to climb. In very few areas are we actually seeing values decrease. And in those decreases, a lot of them have already made back up whatever they lost last year plus this year. If they are down, it's in some cases less than 0.5%. So make sure that you go in armed with the facts. For most price points, it's not a buyer's market right now. No matter what you hear on TV, no matter what you see on YouTube, you need to actually make sure you know your facts and what the supply and demand is. Now, with that said, over $3 million right now in Arizona, yeah, most of that's a buyer's market, and that's an entirely different animal. And I'd love to have a conversation with you about what that would look like for you. But for the average home buyer under $3 million in Arizona right now, you're seeing very competitive scenarios with multiple buyers vying for very little inventory. And in a lot of cases, Arizona has lost about 50% of the inventory that we gained last year when interest rates rose so quickly and everybody was trying to figure out what was happening. Well, they kind of stayed there. And to be honest, life went on. People still are born every day. People still die every day. People still get married. People still get divorced. And at the end of the day, we didn't build enough homes after the last Great Recession that was caused by a housing bubble. Builders lost their shirt more than anybody else in the country, especially here in Arizona. And so when you put all of those things together, there's just not enough homes, and millennials can't live at home with mom anymore. They're 35, 40 years old. They've gotten married, they've had kids, and they can't just live in the basement anymore, for lack of a better term. So with those people coming onto the market, they still need a house, and we don't have any for them, which is going to keep driving prices up until we solve our inventory crisis. So until that's said, most buyers are going to have a tough time, and interest rates are unpredictable. You don't know if they're going to go up or down. What you do know is that it's not going to get any cheaper simply because we don't have enough homes. And when there's a limited availability of homes and a high demand, there's only one place prices can go regardless of the interest rate. Okay. So moving forward though, as both a buyer and a seller, you should know that Arizona is also finding itself in a weird kind of situation with almost 20% of all homes that go under contract falling out of contract. And a lot of times for silly reasons where the buyer and the seller just couldn't agree. A lot of like minor repair issues, buyers who didn't keep on top of their lending situation and making sure that they still qualified for the loan they thought they could have. If you haven't talked to your lender, within the last month, you need to know what you actually can afford. And if your lender's not keeping you updated, then you need a new one. Let me know if you need a list. I've got a list of great lenders. But with that said, a lot of buyers are going under contract for homes they think they can afford, but they haven't talked to their lender in 6 months, and they don't realize that they can no longer afford the home at that interest rate. So make sure if you're a buyer that you are absolutely staying on top of what the interest rates are and what that means for you, and communicating with your lender regularly. If you're a seller, you need to make sure that when you go to accept an offer, that it is the best, cleanest, most sane offer you can find. I recently had a listing in a very desirable part of town here, and we received 3 offers on it. However, not a single one of them was something that most agents would consider as having all their ducks in a row. Ironically, they were all from out-of-state buyers being represented by local agents. The first set, the price was okay, but then they listed a laundry list of terms and conditions that just wouldn't be considered appropriate nor reasonable in Arizona's market, especially with such low inventory. And on top of that, it asked for an an extended closing almost double the length of a normal sale here in Arizona. So what had happened in this scenario is the agent had not properly prepared the buyer for what buying a home in Arizona is really like and what will fly and what won't when sellers start negotiating and reviewing offers. So that's the first thing, is getting an agent who can really tell you what to expect, what will be accepted, what will not, and what can get you to the closing table. The second offer that came through was, for lack of a better term, almost fraudulent. This one came through and it was cash, and albeit they did lowball, but the red flag was that the proof of funds that they offered for this cash was actually a foreign document in another language that they said was an account balance. But thanks to Google Translate and some friends who actually speak that language, I was able to confirm that was not an account balance. It was a mortgage statement and a statement of value for another property in another country. So that's one of the other things that you should be aware of as a seller, but also as a buyer, that come to find out a lot of sellers might be accepting the first offer that comes along that looks good, but maybe they didn't totally vet the source, and then it falls apart because they didn't realize that this buyer didn't really have the cash, or that they were contingent on the sale of another property that wasn't disclosed. So that's another thing happening. Another thing I've seen a lot is a lot of buyers submitting offers without a pre-qualification form. And in Arizona, if you're from somewhere else, in Arizona, that just doesn't fly. In fact, it's even written into our purchase contract, the offer you make on a home, for a reason. So if your offer doesn't come with that pre-qualification form, it's almost junk. It's garbage. It doesn't mean anything because you haven't proven that you can actually perform on the loan. With that said, if you have a contingency to sell another property, another thing I've seen not disclosed multiple times, you run the risk of really upsetting the seller and being in breach of that contract, which would then allow the seller to give you a cure notice in 3 days to get your ducks in a row or to get out of Dodge, where they can cancel and you lose the home. From a buyer's standpoint, that's what makes it so important for you to have your ducks in a row, knowing that almost 20% of these contracts are falling out of escrow for simple things like that. And if you can come to the table with a clean offer, totally prepared, knowing you can close on your loan, and being fully transparent with the seller, the chances of that happening to you are slim to none. But that also gives you a window of opportunity to pick up on homes that other buyers are losing out on simply because you have gotten organized and done your due diligence and know what is expected of you in the contract when others haven't. So just because a home has fallen out of contract in this market doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the home. A lot of times it's simply the buyer who didn't have realistic expectations or was failing to disclose something to the seller. If you're wondering what it would take to get you into your dream home here in Arizona, go ahead and give me a call at 480-717-9405 or visit my website at dustymartinrealtor.com.